Hello everyone, this is Professor Leon, and this is Lecture 4, In-Text Citations for Research Papers. Signal phrases. A signal phrase is a phrase that contains the following information about the source: the author's name, the author's credentials, a verb of attribution, and a transition word. If we look very closely, we're going to see an example where we have to have all of these attributes: the author's name, and then we want to put the author's credentials. We want to put a verb of attribution and some sort of transitional word. Next, I will explain in-text citation errors and how to correct them. The first is citation with no author. When we have a citation with no author, what we forget to put is the author's name. So the top quote does not have the name of the author. What we want to do is make sure that we put the author's name. In this particular example, there are two authors for this quote. We want to make sure that we put the author or the author's names, and we want to make sure that we put the author's titles or credentials. The next type of in-text citation error is a citation with no verb of attribution. If we type verb of attribution in the Google search bar, this PDF by Centralia College is a great way to look at a list of verbs of attribution. In this particular list, we can pick out words such as defines, cites, analyzes, reports, verbs that will color how the author is stating the quote. When we have no verb of attribution, we do not have a verb that characterizes how the author is stating the quote. The example above, it says, according to scientist Dr. Stephen, and it's followed by the quote. In the correct part, you would need to add a verb, such as notes, to characterize how scientist Stephen is stating that quote. And if we have a quote that originally started with a capital letter, such as in this particular quote, we need to make sure that we write a lowercase word. The next type of in-text citation error is when we have a citation with no author credentials. At the top, we have two incorrect in-text citations. So when we don't have the author's credentials, we don't know the background information about the author. Let's take a look at these two. Anna Kira Stinson lets people know that, and then the quote. And then we have the same quote followed by just the last name Stinson. In both examples, the name does not have any type of background information. So we really don't know who this author is, and we really don't know if this author's credentials are relevant to our research topic. The correct way would be to indicate the author's credentials. You can do that before or after citing the author's name, as in this case. The next type of in-text citation error is when we have an in-text citation with a website address. In this particular example, we have a quote followed by parentheses and the website address, or we start the quote and we only indicate the website address. What we're supposed to do is include a signal phrase. Remember again that for the quote, we must look at the author's name, and then we want to state the author's credentials. We want to include a verb of attribution and some sort of transition word. We want to put in brackets any words that began with a capital letter, such as the P in people. Originally, this quote started with the word people and the P was capitalized. But since we have a signal phrase, we have to lowercase it and we have to put it in brackets because we're making a specific change to that author's quote. The second way that we do it is we can write the quote and then we can have the verb of attribution and then the author's name and credentials. The next type of example are actually two mistakes in one: a non-MLA in-text citation and citing a quote within a source. In the incorrect portion, we have the quote starting with King, et al., and then the year. The year is not MLA style. This would be APA style, but this is how the student actually found this quote originally in the source. If we look at the original source, this quote was actually found in the middle of this article. Et al. Is Latin for and others. So this is one author from various authors, and the particular author of this source was quoting King. If we scroll all the way down, we're going to see that King is cited in this particular article. Is King the author of this source? No. Actually, the authors of this source are Lies Exelmans and Jan van den Bulk, both researchers in communication. Now, if we were citing Daniel King, we would have to find out who Daniel King is. Daniel King is the author of the quote. So we have to make sure that we find out who Daniel King is. In this particular case, we find out that Daniel King is a clinical psychologist from Flinders University. When we're going to be citing the quote, we name who the author of the quote is. In this case, Daniel King in Exelmans and Van den Bulk's article. We want to make sure that we cite the credentials of Daniel King, the quote, and then in parentheses, we note where this quote is found. So we want to note QTD in Exelmans and Van den Bulk, the authors of this particular source. So what we're saying here is that Daniel King is the author of the quote, and Daniel King's quote is found in Exelmans and Van den Bulk's article. The final section of this video will discuss punctuation errors and in-text citations. Sometimes when writers are incorporating quotes within their research papers, they might mistakenly put punctuation marks that are incorrect when citing these quotes. For example, they might put a period instead of a comma, or they might put a semicolon or a colon before the quote. These are two incorrect ways to punctuate a quote in an in-text citation. The correct way is to use commas when introducing the signal phrase before or after the quote. So make sure that you use a comma, and at the end, make sure that you use a period. So we've reached the end of this video. If you have any questions, email me.